Here's the thing, your brain, it's not broken, but your planning routine probably is. Or maybe, if you're anything like me, you have thrown out your planners at least 5 times because planning feels like absolute pain to your ADHD brain. And if that is where you're at, and you believe that you either don't have time to plan, or it sucks your creativity up, or you wouldn't even know where to start, then stick around because I'm going to show you not only why your ADHD brain absolutely needs a planning routine, but I'm gonna also show you how to do it in a way that's going to work for your brain, not against it, and reduce that feeling of constant overwhelm. Because we both know that's not a fun way to live, and it's about to end right now. But before we get into it, welcome if you're new here. My name is Kara McGill. I'm an ADHD coach and creator, and I'm here for the busy, ambitious brains who want to do all the things, but they never plan any of it. So when it gets time to actually do the thing, they don't even know where to start. But that all ends today, so let's get into it. So let's start with the biggest roadblock I always hear when I'm encouraging someone to start a planning routine. And that is generally that they just don't have the time, that they're constantly running through life, trying to catch up, and to take like 30 minutes to plan a week would just be an enormous tax on their already busy schedule. And here's the thing that most people don't consider when it comes to a planning routine. If you are going through life just reacting to whatever comes at you in the day, not only do you have to decide what to do every minute of every day, but then you've got to cognitively switch to task mode to actually do the thing. And when you have ADHD, that decision-making process in the moment can be very overwhelming because we very often struggle to prioritize. So when life is coming at you and you have to decide between a million things that you need to do, most often we will end up doing none of it because we are frozen in overwhelm. So if you find yourself at the end of the day feeling completely exhausted and pooped out and you never feel like you got enough done, it's probably because you had no plan for the day, no idea of what was important to do and what's not important to do. So you just drank from the fire hose of life all day long, and by the end of the day, no wonder you're exhausted. Planning is going to help you get around that because you will have an idea of what needs to be done as it relates to what's most important to you, and that is the most important part of a planning routine. Is this thing on? Oh, hey, I'm just popping in to let you know that if you do need help with planning, whether you want something to help you organize what's most important to you and plan your personal life, definitely check out Vision Action. And if you want something more robust to help you plan and organize and strategize your business, check out the Organized Business Template. They were designed for ADHD brains, but they're also very customizable, so you can change whatever you want so that it works for you. And on that note, back to the video. The second thing I hear from ADHD brains when it comes to pushing back on planning is that they feel like it's a creativity killer. So we want to be able to do things when that creative momentum hits and then just be able to rest or do whatever we want in all of the other times. And as a fellow creative, I totally get this. But let's flip that argument around for a second. Because let's say you do get that creative spark of genius and you want to dive in and do something right away. If you haven't planned or prioritized what you want to do in that moment when creativity hits, then you, again, first have to decide what's most important to do in the moment and then actually do it. And very often, the decision-making process can drain that creative inspiration to the point where by the time you get to actually deciding to do the thing and then doing it, you may have even lost that creative spark. And this used to happen to me a lot at the beginning of my YouTube journey. I wasn't planning anything. I was just waiting for inspiration to strike, or having good hair day. I would set up my camera and just start talking about things. But I quickly learned that I actually need to have a script and talking points, or else I would ramble and ramble on end. And not only that, but the topics I actually recorded were not researched. I didn't know if my audience actually wanted to hear them or not. And as a result, the majority of my earlier videos just did not do very well. So I wouldn't be here right now if I didn't start to realize the importance of planning, even when it comes to something that's highly creative. I wouldn't have the audience I have now. I wouldn't have the success I have now had I not been more strategic and actually planning the things that I want to do. That doesn't mean that I plan to record videos at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, and if that doesn't get done, then I failed. But I do plan the projects I want to create when I'm ready to record so that I have a pool of content that's ready to go, and then I don't have to put pressure on myself to record when I don't feel like it or be as consistent as possible, because I always have some videos ready to go. So coming up with that system and planning out my topics is the only reason why I am successful today. Planning is critical to the creative process, full stop. The third thing I hear from a lot of my clients is that planning is futile because they will never follow through with it anyway. And it hurts my heart because that's obviously a deep-rooted story that they're telling themselves around a lot of things in their life. But it also hurts my heart because it absolutely doesn't have to be that way. I'm not going to say that there's one right way to plan, whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent. But what I will say is that for every brain out there, there is a planning routine that works for you. I've talked about mine a million times. I use Notion to plan my life and business. I've been using the same week-by-week spread for years now. And the reason it works for me is that everything that's important to me in my life and business is on one page. All my projects, my goals, my to-dos, my calendar, everything is there on one page. That is what works for my brain. And the only way I was able to figure that out is through trial and error. So it's really important to come at this process with a beginner mind, or at least an open mind where, yes, there is a possibility and a way where I can actually plan my week or month or year and follow through with it. I will say, when it comes to a neurodivergent brain, shorter periods of planning is probably better than longer periods. So I would never sit down and plan out a whole year. My actual planning of what I'm going to get done from day to day happens at the weekly level. And most of that is because ADHDers have something called time blindness, where we don't digest the passage of time the same way as neurotypicals would. We often say that time for us feels like it's either now or not now. And for that reason, I like to keep my planning perspective very short term, because I don't know where I'm going to be or what I'm doing like even a month from now, much less 3 weeks from now. But the big takeaway here is that you are capable of following through on things because you do it every day. You get up, you take your kids to school, you feed your kids, you do a lot of things in the day that you don't acknowledge or give yourself credit for. Your brain immediately goes to the things that didn't go as planned. And most often that's because they weren't planned. They just kind of happened, right? So if you are able to create a routine that works for your brain, that you can sustain and that is interesting for your brain, then you absolutely can stick with it. It's going to come down to finding the right tool, finding the right planning time frame, as I mentioned, whether it's weekly or monthly or something else, and then most importantly, creating a rhythm or a habit around coming back to your plan to make sure you're staying on track and doing the things that you plan to do. At the end of the day, the most important thing I want you to take away is that planning is not a chore or one more thing that you're going to try and fail at. It's actually the highest form of self-care that you can give yourself. Speaking for someone whose life around 4 or 5 years ago was not going in the direction that I wanted it to at all, to where I am now, and certainly life's not perfect, but it's a life by design. It's what I want, it's the work I want, it's the people I want, I'm doing the things that I want to do, and I'm sparing my energy for the things that are most important. And the bridge to that started with a planning process that got me from point A to point B. So if you are currently living a life that you don't want to live, or that wasn't on the agenda, or it wasn't on your plan, then the first step in changing that is actually creating a plan to get you where you want to go. This is not about restriction or hustle culture or forcing yourself into a process that doesn't work for your brain. It's about taking the time to truly understand what works for your brain, what would support your life rather than derail it even more, and then working with that system over time to make it what you want it to be. And the best way to do that is to start with what you believe would be the best process for you. Whether it is a paper planner or a digital system of some kind, ask yourself, what would be the lowest lift when it comes to creating a planning routine for myself? Make it super basic and just see if you can follow it. And if you can't, you don't burn it all the way down to the ground. You ask yourself, what about this current system is working or not working? And then you tweak accordingly. That's the only way you're going to create the system that works for you and ultimately create the life you want to live. And before I get off my soapbox, there's one more point I want to make. And that is thinking about what will happen or what is the cost of not creating a planning routine for yourself. Think about the compounding effect of all of the tasks or projects or things that are left undone because you're reacting to life rather than planning for it. The bills that go unpaid, or the things you forgot to return, or the deadlines that went past and you ended up paying penalties. When you think about the compounding impact of all of the little things that slip through the cracks because you don't have a planning routine or some way to capture tasks, it's not just about the money wasted and penalties and fines or the impact to your credit rating. It also adds to this cognitive load that you're expending every day because, again, you are just reacting to life rather than having an intentional plan of what's most important to you so you can go after it. So, like I said, your brain is not broken, but your planning routine probably is. And if you need help with that, I will link to an entire planning routine that I did right here for my life and business. But again, this has to start with you and what's most important to your beautiful brain. And on that note, guys, thanks so much for listening. I'll see you in the next video.